Oh, we're live. Okay, we're ready to go.
You are all set.
Okay. Welcome all to the February 16th meeting of the, is George in?
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay. All right. February 16th meeting of the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18. This meeting of the Dudley Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners will be conducted in total or in part via remote participation. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at dudleyma.gov. If you would like to attend this meeting, please contact Jennifer Canoyer at 508-949-8007 or watersewer@dudleyma.gov or sewerwater@dudleyma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: via YouTube Live and or by the posted link on www.dudleyma.gov. There, and we got a visitor. Okay. All right. We have a single agenda item tonight. George has been working to try to find the best method to bring Pump 7 online and to alleviate the PFAS issues that we're having down in that area. He has proposed adding a PFAS temporary treatment reservoir down there at Station 3, and treat the water directly from there, because the lab results have been all over the map, and we're trying to get tight numbers that we can go by. It may be just easier to do it this way. In any case, George, did you have anything on this, or did you want to turn it over directly to Ty and Bond?
There was another addendum item too. I just want to let you guys know that went with this. So I don't know if that was on your agenda, but yes, I have been talking to Ty and to Jeff Faulkner extensively in the last couple of days on this issue. We've come up with I think is a pretty okay game plan right now. And I'll let Jeff go through the whole thing. I also have Jay Billings. I hopefully came on the air too. So if you have any questions on the numbers that you see, he can elaborate on that. And I believe Rich is on. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff right now, just to give you a kind of an update where we are. He did talk to DEP today too. So he has better information. I've been stuck at Station 3 all day. I just got back from doing the piping job for well number 7. So I've kind of been on a loop during the day, but I'll let Jeff take it from here and just give you a rundown of where we're going right now, maybe how we should proceed further.
Hey, thanks, George. So this is Jeff Faulkner from Ty and Bond. I also have 2 coworkers on the call, Tom Mahana and James Collins, who were involved in the project. But I'll start by just giving a rundown of where we are right now. So we're proceeding forward with the long-term plan of a PFAS treatment plant at well 6. But that is, as you might imagine, a long-term plan. It's going to take a year to do the design. It's going to take a year and a half to get it constructed. So we're a couple of years away from getting that online. So in the short term, Jay Billings has been working with George to do a monthly monitoring sampling program for PFAS at all the well sites. And as you mentioned, Scott, the numbers do fluctuate from site to site and from month to month. So, there was some discussion about whether there should be an intermediate solution for treatment. We did proceed forward with that blending water main construction in the fall. So the water main itself is constructed, and I believe what George was working on today was some of the pump station work to wrap up that part of the project. But the goal with that project was to blend the pumping station 3 site with the pumping station 6 site so that PFAS could be entering the system below the 20 parts per trillion regulation value. So depending on what month you are, you may or may not be able to do that blend. But the discussion with DEP today was, you might want to still keep the blending, in your forefront, and see what you come up with as you start the blending process. Each site's going to fluctuate depending on how hard you pump it. And there's also some question on whether the lab data, how accurate they can get the results. So I believe this last sample that is still outstanding, the actual sample was split into 2 pieces from one site, and was testing the results from one lab against the other. So we'll find out a little bit more in a week or two on that particular issue. But in the meantime, to move forward, if that blending is not able to keep the value of PFAS under 20, another option is to implement a temporary treatment system at one of the sites. And the site we're talking about is probably the pumping station 3 site, and specifically treating the well 7, the new well that's being connected currently, to treat that site. And then continue the blending so that whatever number is at 6, it blends with the value of the treated water at well 7, and the blend would still work at that point. The concept of a temporary treatment system is similar to the original, or the permanent solution, in that you'd bring a steel vessel, probably 10 feet diameter, 20 feet tall, with media inside of it to allow the water to flow and the PFAS to be trapped in the media. And then the water passes through the filter. And then in the case of the temporary, this would all be done outside the existing building, connected in with pipes, and then back into the building for its chemical treatment, which it currently receives today. And then piped over to well number 6 for the blend. That comes with a cost of an additional cost that's currently not on the radar of the town's appropriations. So I think that's what the topic of this meeting was specifically going to address, on whether the Water Sewer Commissioners wanted to proceed with temporary treatment considerations at this time.
So at the moment, we can continue to move forward with the blending process, or we should move forward with the blending process?
Yeah, I would think you'd want to. A couple more pieces of information. My discussion with DEP this afternoon was with Bob Bostwick. His information is that the way that they would measure you on whether you're in compliance is the quarterly running average. So if you're taking monthly samples, say January, February, March, even if one of those numbers is high, but the other two are low in terms of under 20, if your average is below 20, they would not consider that a violation. So, even if you were a little bit concerned about, any one particular sample that comes back, you think you need to play it out over time to see how it actually does blend.
Jeff, want to mention also the fact of the capacity I'm worried about for the summer months and high usage.
Yeah, so you have the town of Dudley has a limited water supply right now. Only 2 active sources, and both have some levels of PFAS in them. There's another project that's proceeding forward to get a 3rd source online, but that won't be online this summer. So what George is referring to is that the blend turns each well to a certain flow rate to be able to theoretically meet that 20 parts per trillion limit. In the middle of summer, when demand is peaking, the blend might still not work at that perspective, in that both the sites that need to pump might need to pump at a higher rate and exceed the 20 parts per trillion PFAS. So that would also be a consideration.
I think, Scott, what we'd like to do is to go ahead and get permission for the borrowing, but hold off and gather more information and see where we're heading. We're still in the beginning stages of this monthly sample gathering that's been placed on us by the state, which is now part of our regular sampling line. So if we at least get the acceptance done, we can react quicker to what may come down the line, whether it may be that we can blend or that we just wait, see where we're going from there, or try for temporary treatment if it goes in that direction. At least we get some wheels turning here a little bit. I think that's probably the more prudent thing to do right now, and not just do nothing as far as getting an approval for that. But it's up to the board at this point.
We have begun developing a scheme for temporary treatment at well 7. We have gotten some quotes from filter vendors and started to pull together what that concept would mean. But it does have to go through permitting and approval processes, just like a permanent project with DEP and with local approvals. The preliminary cost estimate we have right now is on the order of $500,000 or $600,000 for the construction, and then a little bit of additional for contingencies and engineering costs. So it's not cheap, and it's projected to last a 30-month period. That's what we're sizing it towards, as like a 30-month rental period. It would be rented equipment. So that you could decommission it and then move over to permanent treatment at the well 6 treatment plant building.
Hey, Jeff, maybe also explain the protection, the temporary protection that we're planning for the equipment.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Tom. So the temporary filter would be outside, open to the weather. So during summer months, that's not a huge deal. Water will be flowing through it pretty quickly, so it'll stay relatively cool. However, in the winter months, gets below freezing, so there needs to be some frost protection for the filters and the water inside of it. So the concept is to do a structure around it, call it scaffolding, with some plywood and some tarps, weather protect it, but it would also require heat on the inside to keep it from freezing in the winter months.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Hi, and I sorry for coming on late. If this is something we're gonna have to address permanently, I can't see spending $500,000 to $700,000 for a temporary fix if we're gonna have to do it permanent anyways. Would we be better off just spending that money to do a permanent fix?
We're doing,
Forgive me if I'm going in the wrong direction, but I think what the issue is that especially in the high usage months in the summertime, when we don't have the limited source of a blended stations.
I understand that, but then they're gonna take monthly tests. If those numbers come in high, then we're gonna have to do the permanent structure anyways, right?
Well, I think we're at a position, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're at a position where the permanent treatment is going to have to happen. I don't think there's any way we're going to get around not having permanent treatment.
yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Just to answer Tom's question, yes, we are going to have to do permanent treatment anyway, and it's already in the processes.
Yeah.
That's not the problem. We could do one of a couple things. Is we could do nothing and sit as we are with the notices already out, the way the stations are, and try to ride it out how we go to get to that permanent treatment, which is 2 years out, give or take. We could try blending, but the chances are going to be that I'm going to be taking that offline and going back to normal running to maintain my supply of water, because I will not be able to hold supply with 2 stations running in sync at reduced capacity in the middle of the heavy heat or school season or any added sites going on the water system. The other thing is, if we just right now approve the money, hold everything in check and see where we go and how we go, which seems to be the problem with this whole thing. And I say this all the time, the state is reacting to things and not proactive to things. And this is what happens when research isn't done properly on this. You end up with a problem, and the problem is erratic numbering, results, what have you, that cause us this type of problem. If this was bacteria or something different, or another level of reading a sample, 8 points wouldn't make a difference, or a high or low reading wouldn't make a difference. But you're talking about a level they set that they require something to be done at that level, and all of a sudden you're getting one reading higher, and then another reading lower, another reading higher, another reading lower. That's ridiculous, and that's causing us to. Hello.
Sorry. That just begs my question. I mean, that just, if the numbers are fraudulent, well, I don't want to say fraudulent, in error, could be an error. Why are we rushing to treat if we don't even know if we have to?
The numbers are not an error as far as the station is concerned. There's actual station 3. We're checking on numberings on the other station, number 6, which needs to be a certain level to blend this properly. And we can't confirm or deny anything right now because we're getting erratic numbers there. But like I said, if we hold off and we wait and see where we go, maybe we can just ride this out and get onto the permanent treatment and not have to worry. But I don't want to have a problem down the line, and all of a sudden the state's going to make us temporary treat, and they may not. I don't know what their reaction is going to be, but at least we've got something. We've got, we're starting a process, and this is the issue. At least we're starting something so that we're not caught off guard on whatever happens down the line. And that's kind of where Jeff and I have been talking about, just to kind of, be on the proactive side and not have to go crazy with anything, but wait and see where this all takes us. Because I can tell you right now, where the blending is going to take us is back to square one again, where I have to disconnect stations and each one has to run on its own. I know that's going to happen, just by what's been going on in the last few years. So I guess we're just saying right now, just to look at starting, just to appropriate, but not do anything and get as much data and information as we can, and more DEP interaction, and go from there, and then see how we do. That's probably the best bet.
How long till we get all the information?
It's been coming in sporadically. It takes 3 to 4 weeks just to get sampling done. We don't know how the averages are going to go yet. We don't know if we're going to be able to start a blending procedure or not. We just, like I said, everything is erratic, and we're not the only town having this problem. There's many other towns having this problem, and they're kind of trying to figure out what to do with this, and they're not getting much assistance with it. So we think this is the best course of action right now.
I have a problem. If it's gonna cost, we're gonna spend the $6 million to do this permanent, to throw another 700 plus at it, just to be temporary, on the fact that we don't even know if we need it in the first place.
Well,
I think the more important thing is based on the publicity of the last letter that went out and the reaction of the people who were being served by the water sewer, any kind of inaction on our part would be deemed negligent. And therefore,
I hope.
think we would be negligent by the board of not taking care, in the town, of not taking care of the populace.
But we are,
Whether
because
you like it or not, that's what the reaction would be. At least this way here, we are looking towards a permanent fix, but are taking temporary measures to at least ensure the clarity of the water that people are consuming. You know, I don't think we can avoid not doing something temporary until we get the full fix, if there is one, because I'm not.
yeah, but we could do something temporary and throw $700,000 at it and find out we don't have to do anything.
we're hoping that we don't get into that situation by just holding off on pulling the trigger on pulling more money into it. But at least the approval is there. And down the line, if something happens and DEP office says, "Oh, hey, you guys better do something now," we can pull that trigger. But we're not saying we are going to. We're just saying this is the facts. There's a lot of stuff we don't know. There's certain things we do know, and that is Station 3 at those readings are correct. Those have been going on now for many, many months, a year actually, of constant on that station. It's the other station that came in with that with different numbers. And that's what you have to look at when you blend. You have to have a certain separation of numbers so you can blend properly. But even so, as I say again, the problem always is the two stations running in sequence and not putting out their maximum output when summer comes. So I say leave things right now, just to appropriate the money, to have it on the side, to have the appropriation approved. And then if something down the line happens that we have to go and pull this trigger, at least we've started that process already. And that's one less thing that we had to do. Jeff and I have been working on this right along, trying to figure out where we're going and how we're going. And I think we got the best game plan that we can. We're just in a unfortunate situation and only 2 pumping stations are working on our behalf and not 3. And like I said, we got an early start on this whole thing. At least we've got to the fall of this year that we can put Station 1 online. So, and even that too, there's things we'll have to work out with all that. But I don't think I want to say, let's go ahead and put temporary treatment. I don't want to say, let's go ahead and go crazy with blending. I just want to look at everything, how we go and make a nice decision, a good decision as we move forward to see where the numbers and everything take us. And that's probably the best thing we can do.
George, if I could add 1 or 2 more things. One variation on the temporary treatment is in lieu of renting the filter vessel, is to pre-purchase the filter vessel, use it for temporary, but then move it over to the permanent treatment plant. that has some benefits in, that you're not just renting the equipment. And I can actually, if I can ask James to add to that, does that affect lead times, James?
Yeah, that's the big difference between renting and purchasing. Right now, to purchase a vessel all out is about a 6-month lead time. To rent a vessel could be a week or two if something is in stock, or it could be months if nothing is in stock. The rental market is a first come, first serve, and there's a lot of demand right now, which is why lead time on purchasing vessels is 6 months. It typically was 3 months, so it's already doubled that. But that's another option where you're not completely losing all of the money that you're investing in the temporary treatment.
James, you have an idea how much it costs to buy a vessel?
For the full scale vessel so the rental vessel would not necessarily be the same size as what we would put at the water treatment at the full scale plant. So if we purchase the full scale vessel, you're in the $200,000 range. We'd be looking at about $200,000 to rent one of the smaller vessels for 30 months. So it'd kind of be a wash. You don't get a full $200,000 back because you still have to pay to pick it up, move it, and there's some reinstallation costs. But that $200,000 would not be a fully sunk cost.
All right, I'm getting.
So it sounds like we're better off buying it.
Yeah, I'm a little
Right.
confused here too, because I thought we're talking more than that, but a vessel that is $200,000, will that be capable of handling the needs of that station and what it pumps out?
Yes. Yeah, it would be a single vessel. So in the permanent water treatment plant, we'd want 2 vessels so that you can do change outs and keep the facility running.
Yeah.
So we could do a single vessel at well 3 as a temporary solution.
That's kind of news to me, and I'm sorry for that. I've been out of the loop a little bit with the other work going on, but I'd be more enticed to look at that than I would be to rent if that's the case, and then have it do its thing and then move it over to 6 when time comes, if that's something that's viable on the board.
Yeah, it's just a lead time different is the big difference.
You wouldn't be able to get it for this summer.
When do you think the earliest we could get something like that?
6 months after you purchase it.
And that would
I'm
in the
sorry,
fall timeframe.
but we got, how long? We have more testing to be done, so it's not like we're gonna get numbers next month.
Yeah, and the regulation doesn't really go into effect till October, so we'd be kind of coming in on that time where we just be before the regulation goes into effect. So it buys us some time there. I mean, we could just keep going as we're going and then go into that process, I would assume, in 6 months more.
One thing to consider, and I'm not, that we're getting a lot thrown at us, but another thing to consider is that as this moves forward and as more communities test and as more communities start buying the stuff or looking to buy the stuff, it's going to be harder to get.
Correct.
That lead time was, as they said, 2 or 3 months. It's up to 4, 5 or 6 months, 7 months, whatever, around 6 months. In a year down the road, that lead time could be 8 or 9 or 10 months. In the meantime, if we're waiting, if that's what we're waiting on, we could be caught in a situation where we don't have the ability to provide
Audible.
clean
Potable
water.
water.
So there's a lot to think about, and I understand what George is asking for tonight. To me, it seems like it's insurance. Start moving in that direction. If we don't have to move all the way, we can always backtrack and step back. If we do have to move in that direction, if we've already started the process, because let's face it, nothing in government goes fast. We may be, it may be a good idea. I don't, I'm either way. I hate to, I saw the numbers on this preliminary opinion, and I about choked. But if we end up having to go in that direction, we're going to be hung. If if we haven't started moving in that direction.
But we
If
are,
don't have
Scott,
to go in that- If we don't have to go in that direction, we can always step back.
but Scott, we are, because we're already planning on a full treatment, permanent treatment, right?
Correct.
Yes, permanent treatment's gonna take 2 to 3 years to go online. What happens if, partway through that, we have to do something to, bridge the gap? We're gonna be hung. I don't wanna, I hate to just sit back and, well, we'll wait and see. And then we get caught with our caught with our hand in the cookie jar, so to speak.
Scott,
We can't do anything, because we haven't been moving in that direction.
Scott, I'm kind of absorbing this myself on the permanent vessel. And if right now, just saying it is what it is, that cost to order it and all that, I would be more enticed to do it, only because of the fact is I don't know what lies ahead here for us as far as doing nothing, like you said. And I'm nervous about what happens after October when the MCL comes into place and now it becomes some kind of a violation. And not by our fault at all, just by the way it's been dealt. But thank God we've at least started early in this process. And we have this time frame to talk about this. But right now, I got to tell you, this blending is not something that was really hyped up on, because of the fact is my stations just can't cover it come late spring, summer, and a little bit of the fall. We're just going to be hung to keep it separated to maintain tank capacity. But if this is true with this permanent vessel now that we already own, and we're not losing any money on it because we're going to buy it anyway, and we have to buy it because we're going to be doing permanent treatment, and that's a no-brainer. It might be wise to start that process, and for that kind of money, I don't think we can really go wrong, and we can keep us in the good with doing the best we can with this, and knowing that we're going to at least use that vessel for our future treatment plan.
What, this would be for Jeff or Mr. Collins. I'm sorry, I forgot your first name, Jay. This just says Jay. I forgot your first name. I'm sorry. But
Okay.
So purchasing a vessel or this treatment vessel for, say, just for discussion, $200,000. What else has to go with that in order to have a temporary treatment plan? What else is going to have to be added to it if we purchase something like that? And is that $200,000 the total system, the total temporary treatment plant that would just be picked up and moved, or is there are there more parts to that?
Yeah, if you want, I can take that one, Jeff.
Sure.
So basically, it would be the same cost, ultimately almost the same cost as that final line item that was in the OPCC. The only difference is, instead of that first $200,000 of it being just rental fees that you have no asset afterwards, that $200,000 would be put towards something you own that could then be relocated. So the future water treatment plant cost would be decreased by something on the order of 200,000. It'd be a little bit less, just in terms of moving it.
If nothing else, time. Nothing gets cheaper as time goes on. But
what is-
yeah,
what-
okay. So that
Chairman.
treatment vessel area of 193,750 would be, rather than being a 30-month rental, and with the initial and the demobilization fee would all be the cost of the vessel. Of course, the demob fee and the there would be an added cost to moving it. But that would turn into our backup tank? You said you'd set it up with 2 vessels. They have one for so that you can.
Yeah, the permanent water treatment plant would have 2 vessels. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could, so for the permanent water treatment plant, you would buy one more vessel and then move this one over there and pair the two up.
Okay.
Mr.
just-
Chairman,
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chairman,
Can I ask Jeff a question?
Sure thing.
In regards to this vessel, we're talking the filtration vessel, is that capable of handling the load of, let's say, 300,000 gallons a day out of Station 3?
I think it's about 400 gallons per minute. Is that right, James?
Yeah, the rental we sized to handle up to 450 GPM. And then if we went with a permanent one, it could handle 1,000 GPM.
And on that topic, is that something that could like be installed like in a 40-foot trailer box or a Connex box where it could be made mobile, where a truck could pick it up and move it to the next plant? Instead
Yeah,
of
the
putting
challenge
it
is-
around it, put it right inside a Connex or a trailer box. Is that feasible?
The challenge is these are 26 feet tall,
Okay,
the
that's
permanent
right.
ones.
Okay. That's not
So they're
too
not, they're only 10, 12 feet wide, but they're
All right.
20 feet,
All right.
25 feet tall.
And of course, you can't lay them on their side.
No, but getting back to the beginning of our meeting here, I think what the main subject was, as George was talking, to appropriate this money so we know it's available if we have to make a decision. I think that's what we're really here for, to see if we want to talk with Rich as far as appropriating the money and being prepared for what comes up next. Correct, George?
Yeah, and if you want to make a preliminary decision as where we're going, even with this permanent thing, would be good if you kind of get the whole gist of where we're going. So if something comes in a hurry, the decision can be made quickly because everybody's already ironed out their concerns with it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mr.
that's an
Chairman.
awful lot to digest tonight, between renting and buying, et cetera. I think your main topic is you want to just procure that money and have it available, because it looks like there's a ton of research which direction to go on this. Buying, renting, where it's going to be placed, et cetera.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
just a question to George or one of the engineers. It's 200,000 to buy this. What's entailed in actually hitching it up?
We looked at the pipe that we just laid into the station, which isn't quite even completely covered yet. We would actually tie into that pipe with two T's, an input pipe and an output pipe just before the wall to go into the station. So we wouldn't have to do anything in the station other than hooking up electrical or whatever, or I don't know what it uses, but that's kind of the nicer part of it, that we already have a pipe outside to tie into and not have to worry about breaking through walls and doing anything like that. Placement of it would be, well, Jeff and I are still working on that, but we'd have to probably rent a crane from Central Mass Crane or something like that and have it taken up and placed on whether a cement pad or some kind of firm surface towards the back, or make something up ourselves so that we can do that connection somewhere in that back side or front side or whatever. There's some options open.
Did everyone receive the email that went out this afternoon?
I haven't had a chance to touch my phone, Scott.
Okay. Can
Can I get a follow-up question though, Scott? Scott, can I
What's
butt in
that?
for a follow-up
Go ahead.
question?
Go ahead.
Well, the money, I don't understand. It's you said somewhere between 500,000 and 700,000 for a temporary rental thing. We can buy it for 200, but it's still gonna cost. I don't see where the extra what the extra money is going to. I know you gotta hitch it up, but that's almost $500,000.
Tom, that's why I asked about the email. And it came out it only came out this afternoon, so there is something to look at. There are, I've got it opened up right in front of me. There are 11 different categories under items under it. The first one is the treatment vessel itself. That's the $200,000.
Yeah.
This site construction, which is somewhere around 125,000. Running a gas line, heating, getting the heat for it for the winter time, the substructure to be able to cover it over, to protect it from the elements. Electrical work, is just, there's $10,000 there for electrical work. There's $7,500 there for additional chain link fence, to fence it in, to keep bad actors away. And then of course, some O&M. O&M is figured in, operation and maintenance is figured in for that 30-month period. There's a whole lot on there, and with the total, and I'm guessing this is a guesstimate. This is a preliminary proposal. It's proposing it to be about 677,000, and then 778 with all the engineering and everything else that goes on with that. It's about $100,000 for the engineering costs. Contingency, there's a 30% contingency built in, which of course that doesn't always get spent, but if everything goes well, that doesn't get spent. There's a whole long proposal there. And of course, at the bottom, there is a paragraph that says, this is an engineer's opinion of probable construction cost. Ty and Bond has no control over the actual cost of or availability of labor, equipment, or materials, or over market conditions. So, yeah, this is a proposal, and then with it, the three quotes for the rental, and what three different companies would want for a rental fee, and then there's a concept sketch of the Station 3 and the one particular proposal for how it would be positioned. So there's a lot of information in that email. I scrambled to try to get everything so that I could read it before this meeting without being able to print it.
Scott, I can add a few things to that if
Go
you
ahead.
want. Yeah, so I think you did a pretty good job at explaining some of the line items. I know it's hard to understand, costs at a construction level, but a few points to just make. Like any big project at the beginning stage, where you want to have a number that's budgetary and take some things into contingency level information. So when George asked us to start to pull this together last week, we reached out to the three vendors for the core equipment, which is the filter vessels, and they were able to produce their quotes the end of last week, beginning of this week. But it takes a lot to pull together a specific project, the site work, the electrical, the winterization of the structure around it. So what you have in front of you, and apparently the board members got forwarded later on this afternoon, is that conceptual or preliminary drawing or sketch and cost estimate of what we were thinking initially. As I mentioned earlier, we haven't really delved into the project more than the 5 or 10% design level at this point. We're only now starting to talk to the regulators about what they'll require for this temporary system. So all those numbers are pulled together, just to give you a sense of the scale of the project. I wouldn't get too excited about any individual line item at this stage of the game. It just gives you a sense of where it's leading.
Oh, I was impressed that in there is even a $175 line item for a circuit breaker panel. It just, it looks like you tried to consider just about everything. Of course, there will be other things. Costs may be higher, costs may be lower. Who knows? But it is a good. We're talking about $750,000. We're not talking about $2.5 million. We're not talking about 200,000. So it gives us a ballpark of where we're going to be going, where we could be going.
Mr. Chairman, this is Tom Mahana. If I could just add one other comment too. So, yeah, as Jeff explained, based on the level that we're at right now, as far as just trying to provide you with some concept level cost opinions so that you can get a better sense for the order of magnitude of what this potentially could cost. And so, as Jeff pointed out, we carried in our cost opinion allowances for contingency, like you accurately described. It may or may not be needed, and because we're at that stage, we're carrying a very heavy contingency. It's a very limited scope project, and I know, like, George likes to do some of the work himself too, so that might be an opportunity to save on some of the site work. The engineering, again, at this point, we're just providing a allowance based on a percentage basis, and then once we get into the details, you make a commitment on which how you want to proceed. We can further refine those numbers, but it's also important to understand that there's going to be some degree of engineering that's going to have to be complete on this, because this will have to get approved by there'll have to be a plan, detailed plan submitted to DEP that they'll have to approve before this thing ultimately can get constructed.
Right.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. And thank you, Tom. But that process is not going to go. It doesn't tend to go quickly. Although they did say that they're fast tracking these projects, but there's still time involved. So I believe the question here is do we want to start moving in that direction? Like I said, we can step back if conditions allow it. I'm not hopeful that that's going to happen, but I mean, we can always hope for it, I guess.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jay Billings. I got one more thing to offer to you guys.
Sure.
As you're considering all these options that are being laid before you, we should think about the public notification requirements that are going to kick in. So DEP is requiring monthly sampling at this point. If the PFAS concentration of the water going in the system exceeds 20 parts per trillion for 3 months in a row, then you have a violation and we have to do public notification. So right now we're doing what they call public education. That'll transition over to public notification if the trends that we're seeing continue. And it's likely that that's all going to happen regardless of what we choose to do here. There's no way any of this stuff can get implemented in a time frame that will avoid that. So more of those notices are going to have to go out. And, I'm sure you're going to get a reaction from the public again on them. The MCL is effective now. They're going to require testing in October, but right now the MCL is in place. So if you exceed it, it's a public notification. So there's going to be some of that going on, and I just want to make you guys aware of that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you.
Who's that?
Bob Sullivan.
Okay, go great, Bob. What's up?
Yeah, I was going to pose this to Jeff because I think George may be a little off on his interpretation. George is under the assumption that the MCL triggers in October, but that was actually the date that our sampling was required to start. But since we already started, the MCL is already in effect, and we just haven't hit the MCL yet because we haven't had 3 months of sampling. So my interpretation is that when we get the next month's sampling results, we'll have 3 months worth of samples, which would trigger the MCL, and we will be in violation, and we'll have to do public notices. So at that point, which is part of what I wanted to somewhat address Tom's concerns are, at this point, once we hit that MCL, we're going to have to do public notices. Every quarter we got to send out notifications to everyone. And we will be in violation, and it's just a matter of what DEP does with those violations. I can't see them issuing fines, but they would have that ability. So I just wanted to check to make sure if Jeff says that George is correct, that the MCL doesn't go into effect until October, or if we actually are currently looking like we're gonna exceed the MCL.
Yeah, Bob, I can speak to that. Yeah, you're correct that the MCL is in effect. Dudley Size System was scheduled to begin their testing program in October, I believe. But you've already started it, so the numbers are being reported to DEP. They're aware of what your PFAS levels are. When they actually trigger the public notice, I'm not 100% certain on. I've heard quarterly results and I've heard rolling quarterly averages. So I guess I'd have to clarify as to what month will eventually trigger your public notice.
Yeah, I was unclear on that one as well, whether it's a rolling quarterly average or a quarterly average. I think the way they have it set up, the reporting is quarterly, as in a calendar quarter, as opposed to a rolling quarter, based on George's sampling schedule, I believe. So the reporting period is quarterly.
So we're still going to get blending online soon.
Yeah, but the blending, looking at some of the results, the blending may not resolve the issue.
It may not resolve.
We may still end up violating. And I think we're going to be in violation anyway, because even with the blending, we're not going to get it in time, based on when we have to sample.
That's right.
So I think we're already going to trigger a violation and need to do public notice. So it's just a matter of, do we want to move forward and start being proactive to get something in place to get us out of violation? Or we're going to pretty much be in violation for a 2 to 3 year period until the permanent treatment's installed. I mean, my opinion is I'd prefer to purchase the vessel, because it looks like we're heading towards the treatment regardless. So you might as well put the money towards an asset that will have towards the final treatment.
I'd second that.
Yeah, that all makes sense.
Yeah, so the point is that we need to appropriate the money now. Now, from what I see, it looks like the appropriation that we're looking for tonight is the additional 350,000 out of the $1 million that we originally appropriated for the treatment, which is blending. So this is just kind of an extension of that treatment. So we're just looking to gain access to the additional 350,000 we didn't spend on the initial project. And then one of the other points is that this whole project with the 500 to 750 or whatever it is, they're looking at total cost, and a lot of this cost is operating cost, in my opinion. Regenerating your media. This is something that the system's going to have to understand, that this is going to be an ongoing expense from this point forward. So some of this isn't actually a capital project per se. Some of this is operating costs, through routine operating costs that's going to be occurring on a routine basis.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah, the O&M costs of looks like here he proposed $60,000. That's operation and maintenance. That's going to be
well, that alone is going to be upwards of $40,000 to $60,000 a year.
Sure.
That we don't currently see.
Right.
So a lot of this needs to be budgeted in our regular budget, as opposed to a capital project.
Right.
Including the sampling that we're now doing too. That's something we have to budget for too.
Correct, which is a huge number over what you currently do.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would also prefer to have it the higher volume vessel, with the permanent vessel being able to handle, I think he said, upwards of 1,000 gallons a minute. Because I think George is, even if we put the temporary system in place, I think we run the possibility of still violating. Like George said, he's not going to be able to get the flow he needs, so he's going to have to, go off of the blended portion.
Right.
Whereas this may actually turn around and work the opposite way, where we're taking Station 3 and cleaning that up enough to blend with Station 6 to get us to the level we need, because Station 6 may trigger above the MCL as well, which would then turn it into another whole issue here.
Yeah, I saw our friendly neighborhood bean counter, Rich Carmignani. What did you have?
I was just going to raise my hand here. We have authorization for $1 million. We've only borrowed 650 of it. There's a little bit of a change in plan. So we've already reached out to bond counsel. We had a vote that's almost set in stone. We have our green light letter. Just to be belt and suspenders, we took a summary of what's going on in George's words and sent it to bond counsel. Bond counsel sends it back saying, yes, that's within the scope of the project. We don't need an additional vote to spend the $350 to put in a temporary filtration. You can buy it, you can rent it, whatever you want to do. It's within the scope of the project. Last time this group went through and made their vote saying we'd like to borrow the 650. And it's within your discretion to go through and do the project as economically as you can. No one foresaw any of this. So tonight with a vote, we'd go through and we'd borrow the additional $350,000. It could be less. It can't be more. The plan for the 350 as it sits with our fiscal advisor over at the bank is that we'd borrow the 350. It would go with the other 650, would roll into a note at the end of May into a 10-year issuance. Anything beyond that 350 would require an additional town meeting vote.
Okay, yep.
Along those lines, the proposed $6.5 million is going to go on to the spring town meeting. So I think that's in the pipeline for the Capital Improvement Committee, the FAA. We're sort of lining all of those meetings up right now as well. In the event this is going to be more than the 350, then we'd want to go through and get that language into the form of a proposal and get it through the Capital Improvement, the FAA, ultimately the Board of Selectmen, to put it with the capital project and to move forward with it. Turnaround time on the money, 30 days, 35 days, something like that. Again, we'd be borrowing the money if today's February 16th. Maybe we get the money on St. Patrick's Day, and really we're only borrowing the money short term because I don't think there's that much sitting unused in the budget for you to expend. And then you just roll it into the 10-year note end of May.
Rich,
Yes.
question. They're saying if the 350 is fine, we could buy the vessel. Excuse me. But to install a temporary, they're looking anywhere, up to 750 installed. What is
The
the other?
750 was the total cost.
Right.
Sorry?
The 750 included operating costs and everything else, which is where I was going with that, is that those costs could be rolled into our operating budget and not considered capital and need town meeting vote and everything else, other than voting on our actual budget. So whatever is an operating cost, I would say could go towards the operating budget and rolled into our annual operating budget, as opposed to borrowing as a capital project per se.
But Bob, I mean, we could borrow the 350, purchase a vessel for 200, That leaves 150,000 to get it installed.
Right, 150 to get the site work and get it hooked up, and then
Is
like
that
I said,
feasible?
it would be close. Probably, it would probably go over a little, but I think George would probably have some money. And by the time we got to this point, we're probably looking at next year's budget. So if George appropriated enough money in the budget, under the capital line item or something to cover either the purchase of the granular activated carbon, or, we'd have to look at all the numbers a little closer to establish what things could be considered operating and which things would actually need to go towards the capital project.
So you think with the 350, we can buy it and get it operational?
We could buy it and probably get the site work. I'd have to look at those numbers again as to what the engineers said.
Probably get the site work done, the engineering costs and some of the, there would be some added cost. But it looks like,
Does the engine,
some of that could be budgeted. Some of that could be budgeted, things like heating, things like, I mean,
right,
there are numbers in there that could be pushed into the budget. This
Right, but-
smaller stuff.
Mr. Chairman, I came in late, but didn't I hear the engineers? What was the engineer's cost for this project?
But
Yeah, I think I heard up around 100,000.
Right, so that now we're at 300,000, at least 50,000 to get it installed.
Well, that's engineering's total cost. Some of that's, I'm assuming some of that is construction oversight, additional stuff that doesn't necessarily have to be included in the capital project.
Right.
There'll be some stuff we'll also be doing too to help out, like we usually do with all these projects. So that'll offset some costs.
A lot of the site construction costs, which is, some of that would be able to be,
Done in.
done, self-help. As Tom Mahana had said, George likes to do some of this stuff himself, and there's some of it that he could do himself. But there are some things that he wouldn't be, like vessel install, wouldn't be able to do that. There are things in there that could be done on a self-help basis and help cut some of the cost. But I don't think it could be done for the 350, but I think it would be close, with the things that could be diverted into the budget. That could cut some of that cost down, the capital cost down. And then there might be a small amount added, a small amount that we might have to ask for, whether it be from retained earnings or additional borrowing. I don't think there'd be we may be able to do it without additional borrowing with some retained earnings. Who knows? I mean, this is all very preliminary.
That's the way I would prefer to move is, the little additional we may need is to pull it from retained earnings as opposed to additional borrowing. I mean, we're already going to borrow a ton of money for the final treatment plant.
Right. And we've got a big discussion to go on how we're going to deal with that too. So that's for another day, but it's coming.
I think our only option tonight is to, if I'm correct in what Rich is looking for, is whether or not we approve to move forward on the 350 borrowing to finalize the $1 million originally appropriated, just so we can move forward on a answer, whether it's a temporary rental or purchasing the vessel to go towards the permanent treatment. And then we got to look at the numbers down the road to see if we can get it within that 350 to get us to where we need to be, and then discuss some of the additional operating costs within the budget.
Right.
Now, Rich, are you still there, Rich?
Yes, he is.
Sir.
Okay, just a off question. If we authorize to borrow the 350 and heaven opens up and we don't have to do anything, do we still have to borrow it? We have to.
Tom, you have the authorization for $1 million.
Yeah.
The water sewer commissioners decided to just borrow the 650.
Yeah.
It's a vote of the board. So I could proceed and borrow the additional 350 regardless. But the whole idea is to have everybody on the same page. And
Okay, Mike.
there's also a great, it's a great compliance tool. Why did we only borrow 650? It was discussed at this meeting. This is all we're going to need. Thank you. We need the extra 350 tonight. It's going to be decided. Yes, it's a great idea. If for some reason you go through and you make the vote tonight, I'm going to put the ball in motion to borrow that 350 because of the short turnaround time.
Yeah.
30 days. If this were something you were going to do in the fall, I'd say defer your vote. Because it's going to come to the point where if I'm borrowing money and, I use St. Patrick's Day, it's roughly going to be a month, 30 days. Everything rolls into a 10-year note on May 28th. And we have to start, are you going to borrow money and it's going to settle on April 15th? What if it settles on May 1st? So the whole idea was to have this meeting now so that you have the money and can take your action, whatever it's going to be, and get it rolled into the note. At one point, we're going to be too close to that May 28th date for it to make sense to borrow the money. Is that clear?
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay, all right. I got a little wordy there. I was worried, Tom.
No, my question is, if we borrow it and don't end up spending it, what happens to it?
If you borrow 350 and you don't spend any of it, the project would get closed out with $350,000 extra.
And we get rolled into the permanent treatment if we need to, or could it get rolled into any of the other capital projects that we need to borrow for?
With a town meeting vote on a similar life, yes.
Right. Okay.
So you could, but I'm figuring if there's going to be money left over, it would be a smaller amount. The idea that we borrowed 350 and didn't spend any of it, I'm thinking if you borrowed 350 and you spent 345 and you had 5,000 unspent, it would be sitting in that account. Tonight's exercise is to try to figure out what you're going to need.
We just dealt with something like that not too long ago with a bunch of unspent line items, small amounts of unspent leftover money, and that was rolled together into a like project, a similar project, so that it was used because we had borrowed it, and heck, I think we had borrowed some of it we'd already paid back, and it was still sitting there in the account. So it was just respent on something similar. But that is so the gist of tonight's meeting then is to whether or not to move forward with planning and with I think it's a good idea to have that money sit ready to go if we when I'm not going to say if, because if is crazy, when we have to start
think positive, Scott. If you think positive, hope for the best.
Yeah, okay. When we need to spend the money to treat, we'll have it. We'll at least have some or most. So that's where we're at. Does anybody else have anything else?
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, if we borrow 350 and it gets rolled into the note as of May 28th, it doesn't mean you needed to have spent all 350. It's just you've spent you have 350 and it's in the bank for that specific project.
Right.
You don't need to spend that last $1,000 on it. So if we're just refinancing it, so we just so there's no panic in trying to get that money spent.
No, no.
But for the financing option, this is sort of nice. We have the 900,000 for the previous project. I think the 185.5, and then you'd have this 1 million in here. Everybody in their uncle is refinancing their home because rates are opportunistic right now. So if you had to put together a 10-year note, maybe a little extra in there is not a bad idea, just because this is a great note, a great time to borrow.
Okay. So, is there anything else? Okay, what's the pleasure of the board? Do we have a motion or?
Make a motion to move forward on the borrowing the additional 350,000 that was remaining.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion's been made by Bob Sullivan and seconded by,
Jay.
who made the second?
Jay.
Jay,
Jay, okay, just so that we, because it's virtual. Okay,
at the roll call.
any further discussion? Okay, the vote's got to be by roll call.
Bob Sullivan, aye.
Jay Spall, aye.
Bill Connolly, aye.
Tom Fournier, aye.
Scott Sikowski, aye. Oh, it sounds like it's unanimous, so we'll move forward. Continue to work with to our folks from Ty and Bond. Thank you for your continued diligence on these things. You know, we're shooting at moving targets. It's going to be, you know, I don't think with any of this is going to go away anytime soon, but we're going to continue to move forward. Thank you for your continued assistance.
Thank you.
And George, just keep on regretting not retiring, and and keep on working on moving this stuff forward.
Mr. Chairman, I just had one more addendum item. I don't know if it was on your paper. I asked Jen to put it on there. It's for Ty and Bond. It's to make a decision on what you want to do on that Mason Road project, because it's coming up to spring and we need some direction in which way, either the whole project or split bond the projects, so to speak, or do half a project. It's all up to you. I think everybody seems to feel they want to go ahead and move forward with the whole project and get it done once and for all.
I think that was the last discussion we had. I think that was the flavor of this discussion. Consensus is that we're going to have to. It's going to have to be done sooner or later, and the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to get, and the more times you guys are going to be out there patching Maine to the point where the patches are going to start running into each other.
Yeah.
I don't know, allow a discussion on that, but I thought the decision had been made in the past to move forward with the project as it was originally drawn.
If I didn't think the whole project needed to be done, I wouldn't have voted on it.
What's that?
If I didn't think the whole project needed to be done in the first place, I wouldn't have voted for it in the first place.
Yep. I mean, so we're talking about going from, it's Mason Road Extension, a section of Mason Road Extension, and then Mason Road from June Street down to West Main, correct?
Correct. And then on Mason Road Extension from Dudley Oxford Road, just a little past GNS Drive, and tie it and loop in the whole upper side there.
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear because I wasn't sure that everybody was on board with it. I know a lot of them, you were for it. I just want to give the guidance to Ty and Bond that we're moving forward with that, because things are going to be starting to percolate very, very shortly with that.
Okay, yeah. Did anybody else have any other opinions on that? Okay, good.
Yeah, can I just add to that, Scott, since we're talking about
Sure.
that topic?
Go ahead.
George is correct. We are moving on that one. That's the first contract that we have SRF's approval to advertise. So the goal is to make it available to bidders next week, next Wednesday, and have a bid opening on March 18th at Town Hall.
March 18th. Couldn't do that the day before?
March 17th?
We could do it over green beer. Yeah, yeah, okay. March 18th will be the bid opening.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Let me see, just to be sure we're treasurer. Okay, so we had the one thing. It's not on there, but did any board members have any comments or anything?
No, all set, Scott.
Okay, I guess we need a motion to adjourn then.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second it.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Roll
Aye.
call. vote.
Tom Funya, aye.
Jason.
Bob Sullivan, aye.
Okay. And Scott Sikowski, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay,
Guys.
Have a good night.
Everyone.
thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Night.
Thanks, everyone.